Welcome to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Jason Balin, Hard Money Bankers, co-host Ian Horowitz, Equity Warehouse. Thanks for everybody tuning in today. We have a great guest lined up based out of Chicago. I'm not going to give you any more hints of who this is at this point, but if this is the first time you're listening and watching the show, I promise we're going to keep this entertaining, very educational. We have a lot of fun on this show as well. And if you're a return viewer, follower, watcher, listener, audience member, thanks again for all your support. We certainly couldn't do it without you. As you know, we bring in actual operators and guests, not just gurus, guests that are actually doing real life commercial or residential deals. So you as the real estate investor can benefit and, learn, but have fun while you're learning as well.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for this episode, just doing our pre-interview on this one. I think you guys will get a lot of good topics and nuggets that come out of this. We're at a very pivotal time. This episode will probably come out, sometime late September, early October. And, I guess debt rates are going to start to move. People are starting to prepare for the 2026 year, closing out 25 strong and headed into 26. We're seeing a lot of capital moving. So I'm excited for this. Guys, if you get any value out of this show, the best thing that we can do is give a share. We don't care about the likes or subscribes. It does absolutely nothing for us because we're not selling anything. But giving the shares helps our guests out because they're coming on here and giving us nuggets left and right. So enough about us. You guys know who we are. Let's bring in Joel Friedland from Chicago, Illinois.
What's up, guys? Hey, Joel, how are you?
It's good to see you guys. I'm very excited because I know you from watching you on your various podcasts that you've done, guesting and hosting. And I'd like to have this discussion be something that's really valuable to your listeners. That's really important.
No, that's great. Why don't we just start real quick background, a little bit about Joel, kind of where you came from, how you got started, and then a little bit about your current business operation.
Sure. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I'm 66, and at age 22, after graduating from the University of Michigan, I went to work for a family that I met that owned 80 industrial buildings, and they were a father, 2 sons, and a daughter, and they mentored me for 10 years in industrial real estate. So I made my first industrial real estate investment was $2,500 in 1981 when I was 22 years old. The dad says to me, "You're going to be our leasing agent and you're going to be a management guy, but I want you to learn my end of the business, which is I'm what's called a sponsor." I didn't even know what that meant. And I didn't even know what industrial real estate was. I stumbled into that job and I got really lucky that I had this fabulous mentorship family that was showing me how to do things. And he said, "I want you to invest in a deal." So I put $2,500 in a complex of industrial units in a town right next to O'Hare Airport called Schiller Park. And turned out, by the way, to be a real crap deal. $2,500, which at that time was a lot of money to me because I was making $14,000 in my first year back then. And there was vacancy and there was some problems with the lender and they over leveraged. And it turned out that I got my money back, but I didn't make anything on it. And I held it for about 20 years. So that was my first learning experience in syndication. About 10 years later, I decided to do my own first syndication. And the father's name was Milt Podolsky and the son, Stephen Podolsky. I went to them and I said, "Guys, I want to do my own deal." And they said, "All right, well, you've earned the right to do a deal here where you are the manager or the general partner. And we'll help you do it. We'll put up a third of the money." So I went out and bought a piece of land and I decided to build a $560,000 freestanding industrial building on a speculative basis. And true to their word, they put up a third of the money, and they gave me names of their investors who I went and had lunch with and convinced their investors to invest with me. Plus, $4,000 per investor, I brought in a group of my own, about 12 or so investors that have been with me since then, which goes back to 1989. Those investors, those who are still alive, are actually all still with me.
Excellent.
That deal, that deal was debt-free deal, no debt.
What year was this? This first one?
1989.
1989. So this is what this single tenant, and industrial building. I mean, you've been doing this from the beginning. You didn't kind of branch off at smaller asset classes and work your way up into different things. This is it. This has been it.
No, my first deal was $560,000. My second deal was another development, $2.7 million. I was 31 years old, and the first one worked. We leased it to a building supply company, and they moved in and said, "Wow, this is pretty easy." And then in 1990, I did this $2.7 million development and sat with two buildings vacant for over a year and a half, because what happened, there was a downturn in 91. It was the Gulf War, and it was really, really rough. So I just sucked on pipe. It was a very, very bad deal. So all these people who had invested with me in the first deal, they had a good experience. I had to tell them, we're being vacant and this deal's not working. And it's humiliating to have a bad deal and have to tell people, but you got to own up to it. You got to tell them, you can't hide it. So one guy calls me up. He says, "How do I get out of this deal?" I said, "You don't. Nobody wants to get into it. I don't know how I would get you out." And he said, "Oh, so then I should start to like it?" And I said, "Yeah, you should start to like it."
Well, so Ian, I know you're going to have a bunch of questions. Yeah. Let me just ask one other follow-up thing to this. How many cycles have you seen since 1989 and today in this particular asset class?
I've been in 4 down cycles. The worst one was 2000. 2008 was, I had 50 buildings. I was at 7 banks. I had $70 million in personal guarantees on these industrial buildings. And in 2008, we had 10 bad deals out of 50. And all I was doing was trying to survive. I literally went into a severe clinical depression. I can't tell you that I actually felt like I wanted to end my life, but I felt like the world was crashing down around me and I couldn't save it. And it was the worst feeling in the world. And I through a series of different kinds of therapies, meditation, medication, I did through that period and came out of it, but it was rough. And so I've seen the dark side of real estate and I've seen the upside. The upside, I can tell you, for example, we put a building under contract a number of years ago for $3 million, and I cold called the neighbors on both sides, and we sold it for $1 million profit to the neighbor. Just, it's good and bad. Listen, anybody who tells you it's all good, they're full of it. It's not all good.
Oh yeah, that's 100% the most true statement you guys will hear all day. It's not all peaches, man. Well, I guess with that being said, so just let's go back to 2008, where you said you were having some of the worst years. Did those 10 bad deals take out your whole portfolio? Were you able to salvage? What did that look like?
Yeah, well, it took a lot of years, but I salvaged the whole thing. We had 1 foreclosure out of 50 deals. I was glad to give that building back. It wasn't even our bank, and it wasn't my banker. What happened was the bank went out of business, like a lot of banks did back then, and another bank took them over. And I didn't know the new banker. They didn't know me. And they got kind of tough with me, and they said, "We want you to pay down this debt." And I said, "I need your help. I need you to ride with me on this? It's got a vacancy and I need to get through this tough period. And the bank said, no. I said, fine, take it. Take it. It's yours. And they should have actually played ball with me. I would have, as an operator, knowing that neighborhood intimately, I would have made a deal there. Instead, they sold it for some kind of a pretty big loss on their loan. And whatever they did after that was their problem. Not being cooperative, I think, is a big problem. You've got to have cooperative partners, whether it's your bank or whether it's your partner. And in this case, I was also, unfortunately, in a dispute with my 50-50 partner, and we were deadlocked on a lot of decisions where we couldn't do things because we came to the place where we were from different angles, and he wanted to put the whole portfolio into bankruptcy to start over, because between us we had these $70 million worth of personal guarantees at all the banks. And he said, Joel, I just want to put it in bankruptcy. And I said, look, Dave, the difference between you and me is I have 250 investors who I've built up over the years. You've been the deal finder, but if we end up bankrupting, all of my people lose all their money. And that's just not going to happen. I'm not going to let that happen. And so we fought and literally had court battles and arbitration battles over him trying to sink the entire portfolio so that he could start over. He was 10 years younger. At that time, I was about 50 and he was about 40. And he said, I don't want to fight to get out of this hole. You want to fight to get out of the hole? Fight to get out of your own hole. I want out of this thing. And so ultimately, this is a really tragic thing, but it is how the fight ended. He ended up getting sick with something called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And in the middle of our war, he died at age 48.
Damn.
You probably haven't heard a story like this.
Yeah. I got a lot of questions, and I don't want to skip over some stuff on the debt piece, but I want to keep going down this road about the partnership and the inflection points and everything else. So you're sitting there, you're fighting, and you're saying, no, dude, like, our word to our investors is number one. It's your reputation because you're the capital raiser. I totally understand that. He wants out. I guess he never really gets out because he passes. I assume he's married, kids, some sort of heir is taking over his position. How do you then resolve that position? Do they just say, okay, Joel, you're in charge, get us out of this mess? Or like, just give us a dollar amount, or here you go, we're gone. Like, what happens there? Did you have a succession plan in your operating agreement? What's all that look like?
This is going to really blow you guys away. It's a crazy situation. My relationship with his wife became bad. She's a surgeon in Chicago, very renowned breast cancer surgeon, and a wonderful person. But because I was fighting with her husband, she was loyal to him and wouldn't talk to me. And he started to have brain problems. He couldn't think straight. So they appointed a fellow that I knew who owns a title company in Indiana to be their family's representative to negotiate with me as the replacement general partner for Dave. This guy, his name was Dan, and Dan was outstanding. And Dan said to me, let's get together. And he said, look, I know you're fighting with Dave. I know that you want to save the portfolio and he wants to bankrupt it. He says, I'll go with you. Let's save it. And let's have you run it. But you have to run everything by me. And I'm your new partner making decisions on behalf of Heidi and Dave. And that's what happened. So Dan and I became very close. And we worked through everything during the year that Dan took over while Dave was really sick. And it ended up working out. And one of the reasons it worked out is I had bought key man insurance on myself and on Dave and on our third partner, who was a more silent partner. And we all knew that when Dave passed, that we would get $3 million of cash from the insurance company, from the Guardian. And we did. And Dan knew that, and Heidi knew that. And, in Dave's unfortunate situation, when he died, the $3 million more or less saved us.
That goes back. How many people up front don't do key man? How many people don't have a buy-sell agreement? How many people don't have the maturity to do some of these things? I mean, that's actually a really interesting way to think about it, because I know Jason with his business partner has been talking a lot about, whole life insurance policies and other things to protect pieces of their entity. And I think, I don't know, man, it's just really interesting to think that you can turn a bad situation into a good by you made a proper step early on to protect your guys' self. Now, did you have that key man risk because it was a benefit to the capital investors, or did you have it because you're like, hey, you're 40 and 50, you're not that old, but you're getting to a time where you can see in the foreseeable future you might need that? What was the motive behind getting key man risk early on?
We had all these guarantees. I realized that the personal guarantees were extremely risky. And I said to Dave, we need to get this insurance, because if something happens to either one of us, the person who survives is going to be reeling. We're going to be reeling. We're not going to know what to do or how to handle it. There won't be the money to solve the problem and pay someone to come in and help to replace what you do in the company. And so we need some runway, and to have $3 million for, if I die, you get the $3 million to use for that, and vice versa. And he bought into it. He agreed. He thought it was a really good idea. It just so happened that we had a bad partnership agreement. And the key to this whole thing is having a great partnership agreement. The problem we had was that if there was a deadlock with two partners, there was no way to undo the deadlock without litigation. And so after Dave passed, I did bring in another young partner, and the other young partner and I, the first thing we did is we created a partnership agreement with a succession plan that dictated how decisions are made while we're both alive. And if I was to pass away, or if he was, or we both are too, what happens to the decision-making of the portfolio. And I think you'll find this to be really interesting. The smartest investors in my group say to me, I don't want to put more than, let's say, $1 million with you, or $500,000, or whatever the number is, without knowing more about what happens if you're dead, if you're disabled. So I came up with this agreement. It's 3 pages. I could explain it to you, but it's a little complex. It has to do with one of our wealthiest families that invests with us being a tiebreaker in the event that something happens. And where my family has voting rights, my young partner Eric has voting rights, and this wealthy family has voting rights. And you got to have 3. There's a reason that the Supreme Court has 7 instead of 6. You can't have a tie, because a tie means you're in litigation and you're just deadlocked. So we had to have a third party in order to break any kind of deadlock if there's a disagreement as to what to do with the properties. And that's what we've got now. So this guy from Boston, he calls me and he says, Joel, I want to invest in your new deal. I love that it's all cash. I love that there's no debt, that you're a safety freak. I'm with you, man. And I love being with you, and I'm going to go into more deals unless I determine that I'm at risk because you don't have a good plan. So I said, Dan, I'm going to send you my succession plan right now. So I got on my computer, I sent it to him, and he sends me an email back. He says, this is perfect. I had no idea that such a thing existed. I've never asked anyone this question. No one's ever sent me their succession plan in their decision-making document. And because I now have this, I'm totally comfortable. You guys have done a good job. I'm into the next deal. I'll put 250 in.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great.
Great advice.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good advice. When obviously there were some challenges with this portfolio. This was an older portfolio. I'm sure there's things now that you put in place that are different. Was some of that stuff market driven? Right? Because obviously when things are good, they're good, right? Things, you don't typically have disputes with a partner unless things start going bad and, you're not taking the amount of money out that you want, or there's more headaches and stuff like that. So could any of that stuff with your partner have been prevented, do you think, early on, or do you think there was a market shakeup? You guys were along for, I'm guessing this is the case. You're along for a wild ride and you're like, hey, we're going to have to buckle up and we're going to have to get through, the next few years, then we'll be back in a good spot again.
It's like a marriage in a way. When you get into a good marriage, you kind of know you're in a good marriage. When you get into a bad marriage, you kind of know you're in a bad marriage. And the reason that the divorce rate is 50% is because two people getting along for a long period of time, sharing values and making decisions together, is very difficult. And what I should have done is when Dave and I converged on our approaches to real estate investing, I wanted to do more industrial, sticking with industrial, low debt to no debt, be in a position where if something terrible happens in the economy, no matter what. And Dave was younger and wanted to take more risk, and he decided he wanted to try doing some retail and some development. And I just didn't feel good about it. But rather than fighting with him, like a marriage, you stay in a marriage where the spouse is doing things and you think to yourself, I don't want to do this. And you just cram it down. You just say, okay, I'll do it. You take the cram down, you accept it, you compromise. And what I did is I kept saying yes when I should have said, Dave, we need to break up. Let's do, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. And the problem is I kept saying yes to things that I felt were risky. And he wanted to take more risk. I just didn't. I'm sort of like an anti-risk person to the extent you can be in real estate. And I should have broken up with him, and I didn't. And it got out of hand, and we had too much property, and we had a couple $100 million worth of assets, and we were big deals. We felt like big shots. He got his BMW. I put the big addition on the house. We joined country clubs. I mean, we were living the big life, and breaking up would have been a start over, and it would have caused each of us to have to sort of tone down the way we were living, because we were afforded a really nice lifestyle and a really nice living because of what we had built together. And breaking up is hard to do. There's a Neil Sedaka song, breaking up is hard to do. And I should have broken up. I just didn't. It was a stupid mistake.
Do you think, hindsight looking at it, do you think there ever could have been a world where it was like, all right, man, you go and do the retail and development on your own, but when it comes to deals that we agree on, we're going to keep them in this, so you could have had the best of both worlds? Or do you think, obviously it took a turn, unfortunately, for the worse, but ultimately for the better, but do you think there would have been a world that you could have survived together but separate at the same time? I guess an open marriage, per se.
Ian, I've thought about that a lot. The answer is I don't think so. What would have happened is we would have looked at the $200 million, and he would have said, I want the $200 million worth of real estate. And I would have said, I want the $200 million worth of real estate. And we could have said, well, let's keep that together, and you go do your new thing and I'll go do my new thing. Probably that would have been the way it would have gone had we come to that. But it came to 2008 first, so we didn't have an opportunity to have the runway to make good decisions. Instead, we were put in a position where we were under the gun and had 7 banks telling us that they were going to put us in workout. And they did.
So let's talk about this then. So obviously your partnership struggles, has a good ending. I think there's a lot of great lessons there. Guys, you should probably go back and re-listen to this section, because I know I'm going to, because there's a lot of nuggets that were just dropped there. With that being said, let's talk about I wanted to kind of go back to 2008 and these banks jamming it down your throat. My guess is from 1989-ish, I think, where you said you went and did your own deal, up until 2008. You're presumably leveraging the hell out of anything you can to grow a portfolio. Was 2008 the hard cut that was like, I'm never touching fucking debt again, right? Just let's use a crazy example. Or was there something else that continued to happen? Or were you already thinking that leading up to 08?
I remember my first deal was $560,000, and it was a development. It was debt free. I always wanted to do debt free because I am anti-risk. I've always been anti-risk. What happened was I lost my way because I found that we were making all this money with all this leverage. When leverage works, man, it works. Someone told me the other day, it can either burn down the house or it can sizzle the steak. And we were sizzling our steaks. And my biggest problem, that this is like so vulnerable for me to tell you this. It's like, I am, as a person, extremely risk averse. I don't like taking risks. I'm not a person who goes out and does things like, I don't go on snowboarding trips. I don't figure out, I'm not a guy who's going to go figure out how to swim with the sharks. I'm in a cage and the sharks are all around me and I've got my oxygen tank on. I'm not that guy. I like doing gardening in my backyard. I've got 3 grown kids. I like being with the grandkids. I just like living a simple, uncomplicated, unrisky life. And I was that way when I was younger. And I got into business with the guy who was the biggest risk taker that I've ever met. I mean, think about, so I was constantly worried. I was just constantly feeling like this guy was putting me in a risky position, and I was always uncomfortable with it. And I kept saying yes, because we kept making a lot of money. You're making a 7-figure income and you're just putting money away and building your net worth. And you say, well, this is working, but there's going to be a downturn. There's going to be something bad that happens. And it did. So I was not living my best life my way. I was just going along with them.
Yeah. And there might've been something attracted to his life, to his, obviously sometimes partners, different partners are attracted to things and they're very different. And maybe there was some attraction to the way that he acted versus you and vice versa, right? He was more risk adverse and it was like, hey, maybe we should try this and see if we can get out of my shell a little bit, and then quickly realize it's like, hey, this isn't for me. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's funny. This guy could have run for president and won. He was 6'5". I'm 5'8". He was the quarterback on his high school football team. He played college football on a scholarship. He was the embodiment of like the successful type A jock, brilliant. And I was like in the chess club. So, I had this partner who was this hot shot, and he started making friends with all the other hot shots in Chicago. And he joined YPO, which is the Young Presidents Organization. And so he was friendly with all these people, and he would go on these fantastic trips, and he'd go on private planes with people. And he was a player, man. And I was not a player. I never wanted to be a player. All I wanted to do was have low risk, debt free industrial buildings that cash flowed, build a portfolio, and just be a family guy and have a quiet life.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
All right. So the magic question is, how are you structuring these debt-free deals to begin with? So obviously I get it, no bank leverage. You're obviously bringing in capital investors, presumably putting some of your own funds into these deals as well. Like, what does a typical structure look like?
So we're buying a building next week. We are borrowing. The building is being bought and acquired for all-in costs of $4 million. And we're raising $3 million, and we're putting 25% debt on it. I don't like that, but my new young partner, who is 20 years younger than I am, who also is risk averse and understands who I am and where I come from, we debated. We debated about whether to do this all cash or not, because the last 3 deals we did were 3 industrial buildings in Chicago. There's 20,000 industrial buildings in the Chicago area. And of those 20,000, we own 23 of them. Over the years, I've owned another 80 of them and sold them. I know that market cold. I mean, I know the market really well. And we only buy buildings that are a certain shape and a certain size and a certain location. So we only have, of the 20,000 buildings in our market, we really only have any desire to buy about 500 or 600 of them. So we are all over those 500 or 600 owners, cold calling them, sending emails to them. We had a summer internship program. We had 6 interns. I've sicked them on the industrial parks, and they went and met with those 500 owners. And when we find a deal like that, what I do is I let my investors know we've got this deal. The building's in a town called Wooddale, which is probably, as the Chicago industrial market goes, Wooddale is right next to O'Hare Airport. It's probably, if you talk to the industrial brokers in town, it's where everybody wants to be. It's where the entrepreneurial people want to be. I only buy small buildings because one of the things I got in trouble with was, if you have a building that's so big, if it goes vacant, because industrial is usually single tenant, if it goes vacant, you got to be able to carry it. If you have debt, there's no way. But with no debt, it's easier. And with a smaller building, $4 million as opposed to $20 million, I can handle that. So today's structure is we buy the buildings first with some money that we have. I raise money from a group of 40 investors to go buy properties, and then we close. And then after we own it, we backfill it with investors. So we did another deal in a town called Carroll Stream, bought the building. It's $1.5 million, 10,000 foot building. And I went out and raised money in $50,000 increments. And we own it all cash, no mortgage. And it just helps us sleep well at night.
So will you split? Is it like a 50-50 split with the investors? Is there any pref payment, or what does that look like for the capital investors?
Yeah, it's a 7.5 pref. We do 70-30 up to 15%. And then after 15, it's 50-50.
Right. So the investors own 70%, they're getting 7.5. And then once you have the 15 IRR metric, then you're going to go ahead and waterfall that into a 50-50 split, and they're still getting their 7.5 first. Yeah. Will you once they're stabilized, will you refi out? Like, what's the exit contingency for these capital investors to get their capital back?
This will be another one that'll be a little unusual in your world, I'd say. We buy for the long term, and we don't like to sell anything. So we treat ourselves like we're the investor's family office, and we sell. If someone twists my arm behind my back, they'd have to twist pretty hard for us to sell. Because the question is, except for making carried interest and fees and ringing the bell when you make some money, why do you sell a great property that took forever to find that you love? Why sell it? So I've got a group of investors that is very unusual. They don't mind long-term. They don't mind no debt or low debt. And what makes it even more interesting is I have this ability, because I know all my investors personally, that if somebody wants to get out, not selling the property, but they want their money out, I can go to the other investors and say to them, let's say Benji wants to get out of his deal. He's got $200,000 in this building. I can say to the other investors, who wants the 200,000 or who wants 50? We'll do four $50,000 dollar increments, and it's called Rule 144 in the SEC. Rule 144 is where one party can sell to another party, and I can accommodate it, and it's not breaking any securities laws.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, technically, it'd be a Ponzi scheme because you're replacing with that. But right,
no,
exactly.
No, it wouldn't be a Ponzi scheme. It would just be. It's just a secondary offering.
No, I'm saying right. I understand that you have the affordability to replace. Technically, any capital investor could technically sell their shares. You're just saying this. The rule allows for you to help facilitate it,
Yes.
and you're not breaking any securities laws, and you're not saying, "Oh, hey, you want out? I'm bringing someone else in." Because we've had capital investors come and say, "Hey, I want my money back," and we say, "Well, what do you want?" They're like, "Well, I'm in a desperate situation." And they might not always want par. It happens sometimes. People just want to go.
We do it based on a yield. The buyer of the piece wants a yield. So I'm doing my deals at 7.5% yield right now. That if I go into a deal, I want my investors to get 7.5. So if someone wants to get out of a deal, what I do is I figure out what the distribution is, and then I take that annualized distribution and I multiply it times 13, and that's how much the guy gets, because 13 is the multiple of times 13 is at 7.5% return. So if someone's been in a deal with me, let's say for 10 years, and they want to get out, they don't sell for what they put in. They sell for what it takes to get the new person who's buying them out to get 7.5%.
Right.
So are you doing distributions to accelerate, try to get their principal paid back as quick as possible, or no? Or their principal, their amount just stays in, and whatever you guys can distribute, you distribute. And I'm trying to figure out.
It's like a bond. It's like a bond, but it's like a bond with upside. Our whole purpose is to give people cash flow distributions. So if someone, let's say a guy sells his business for $10 million, all right, he's going to pay taxes on it. He'll end up with $8 million. If you're a lifestyle guy and you got a house in Florida and you got a house in Colorado, you can't live on $8 million. There's no way. So, because part of that money is invested in the house in Colorado and parts in the house in Florida, and you got a mortgage, and you've got your kids in college, and you've got your expenses, and you've got your cars and all that stuff. People need income. So if someone was to take 6 million of their 8 million and put it into an income producing investment, they want to maximize how much they're getting. So roughly they're getting $400,000 a year if they're investing at 7%. And so that my people are in this to get income, not to see how fast they can make a 20% IRR. Because if you're looking for 20% IRRs, you're going to lose money. And I've had it with that losing money thing. It's going to be really hard to lose much with no mortgages. And so again, I want to go do my gardening, and I want to sleep well at night. Last week we went to a wedding, a destination wedding in Big Sky, Montana. I want to be able to enjoy my family and my friends and not worry about the next downturn and the bank calling like 2008 and saying, "Hey, Joel, pay us down." I can't have that. And my investors don't want that.
Yeah, no doubt. I can see it. I get that. Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my brain.
It's really hard. Really hard. It's really hard to raise 100% equity, because if you're borrowing 70%, you only have to raise on a $4 million. You don't have to raise $1.3 million.
Yeah.
Right. I can raise $1.3 million much more easily than I can raise $4 million. It's a lot of work, and I love my investors, and part of the best thing of it is the relationships with the investors. That's what I like more than anything. When I go to Florida in the winter, I have lunches and dinners with about 30 of my investors over a period of 2 months. It's the warmth of the relationship. Yesterday, I had lunch with a guy who's 91 years old who has been with me for years and years, and I just relationships are what make life special. And that's what I'm afforded the opportunity to do by doing this. I have meaningful relationships with people who share my values and who are low risk investors and who trust that I'm going to be a good shepherd of their low risk dollars in my real estate deals.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess obviously you're chasing deals. I mean, I think that's a very important part about the capital investors. I think the other thing, and maybe Jason's trying to wrap his head around, is, the yield. You're not buying 7.5 cap deals. You're buying stuff that, you can really force value add and get, 15-20%. So you can get your margin and then some over a period of time, right? Because there isn't much leverage. So you're not going to be able to get a lot of these IRRs that you see advertised. They're all levered IRRs, right? Or they might be the gross IRR that's levered up God knows how many times, and a refinance that they're expecting.
Yeah.
And you're not doing any of that. You're taking away all those frills. So that tells me you're buying really good deals at a really good price, knowing you can force the value for you to ever really make a dollar, right? You just have to.
Yeah. I have a funny statement that I like to make about IRR. IRR starts with the letters IRR, which to me stands for irrelevant. I'm looking at the average annual return as opposed to IRR. And the way I look at it is, if I buy a building that starts at 7% yield, and every year the rent goes up and we keep the building for 20 years, by the 10th year, we're making about 9% on our money. And by the 20th year, we're making about 12. So that means we're averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 9.5 or 10. That's the cash flow. Plus whatever the appreciation is. And theoretically, I've been watching this for 40 years, so I know my numbers. Over any 20-year period of time, the building doubles in value. So that means that if you take that 20 years and you figure out that that's 5% a year on average, I take my average 9% yield, that's the cash flow that I distribute to the investors, plus the 5% in 20 years if we sell it for double. And that's a 14% average annual return. And that's what we tell people. We shoot for 14. If we make it 20, it's by accident. We bought buildings in locations where the neighborhood has changed so dramatically that the values have gone up 4 times. That's an accident. It's an accident.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that definitely is a good point. I think Joel's frozen real quick, but I really do like the idea. And we've had some other capital investors come through and other interviews that have done similar type structures where it's been a 50-50 type deal. Joel, there's been so much information. We're going to have you come back on and talk about your lease structures and everything else. I mean, because this has been really, really good. I mean, I'm going to tell a lot of people this has to be a rewatch, just the partnership section alone, and then deal structure as a whole. I think it's a very interesting approach. What do you see for you? I mean, take this as a respectful statement, but you're 66, you're older than Jason and I, and we like to look up and say, hey, and we joke all the time, we're going to be investing in real estate until we're dead. I mean, what does the next 20 years look like for you on your time horizon and your investment career? Have you thought about any of that?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you 2 things that are kind of interesting. Number one, Sam Zell, who's from Chicago, and
one of our favorites.
Yeah, one of my favorites. I attended a conference that he spoke at, and somebody asked him, when are you going to retire? And his response was, retire from what? I like doing this. This is what I do. I'm not retiring from it. So that's number one. Retirement is not in my future cards. I can do this as much or as little as I want. The beauty of real estate, for anyone who's listening to this, real estate is freedom. Real estate is freedom, because you can do it when you want, where you want, how you want. And that Sam Zell quote is perfect. Also, I told you that I have this family that is my third wheel in the event that something happens to me or something happens to Eric, my partner. So our third party is this family, and the fellow Nate Wagner is 98. and he has still not stopped investing in real estate. He goes into all my new deals, and he says, who do you know that's still buying into new deals at age 98? And the answer is, Nate, it's you. So I aspire to be anything like Nate. That's the answer.
Yeah, I love that. Jason's got a similar investor that's up there in age. He's still going hard in the paint, from what I can tell and from what I hear. So that's an awesome way to think. That's an awesome way to be. Joel, before we let you go and let you tell everybody where they can find you, what's one book or podcast that you enjoy to listen to, or you think people should go read?
First of all, I love Seth Godin. I listen to all of his podcasts on strategy. The man is fantastic. I have another podcast on the economy that I like. It's called Thoughtful Money. I absolutely love it. And it's this guy, Adam Taggart, who interviews different economists from all over the world twice a week. And as far as reading is concerned, I have a bookcase full of books over there that are more or less how to live a better life. And I like these self-improvement books. My favorite one these days is this guy, Ryan Halliday, and it's called Stillness is the Key. And it's about taking a step back and just being with your thoughts, being quiet, not rushing around and having to be busy every second. So I've been reading this a little bit every day, and I believe in it. So that's my thing.
Yeah, those are all good ones. We'll get those in the show notes. Joel, where's the best place people can find you on the internet? They want to learn about what you're doing. They want to invest with you, or they just want to stalk you and try to do exactly what you're doing. Where's the best place to find you?
BritProperties.com, BRIT, one T Properties. We are very actively working on a new website. So forgive us if someone looks at it and it's not great. We're in the middle of refreshing. And in that, we've got a lot of good articles about, one of my favorite articles in there is why you should not invest with us. And it gives the list of reasons that there are risks and you should stay out of this crap.
Yeah, that's a good one. Give them all the doubts. All right, guys. Well, with that being said, Joel absolutely crushed it. If you guys got any value out of this, please feel free to share the show. And as you guys know, we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.